And welcome into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. Today I am flying solo. Let's do a show about the brand new expansion franchise here in the Las Vegas area. They are known as the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think they have far exceeded expectations that anyone could have set for them, themselves included. I do have a special guest on the podcast today. Be joining me momentarily, but the buzz around this city has been electric. Season ticket holder myself. Got looking at the flag right now of the Vegas Golden Knights up in my studio, and I couldn't have been more thrilled with what I've seen from this city, from this team so far. And we are joined in by the founder and creator of the Sinbin website. You can catch him at Sinbin.vegas. His name is Ken Boehlke. Ken, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Obviously, the buzz in Las Vegas is electric with the hot start of the Knights. It is the first pro sports franchise in Las Vegas. We obviously have the Raiders coming, but what's been the buzz around T-Mobile and the City National Arena since you've been a part of covering this team?
I think it's a bit of unbelievability. Is that a word? I'm going to go with that.
It is now,
so
yeah.
People just don't. They're having a hard time wrapping their mind around not only that we have a professional sports franchise, but also that they're good and really good at this point, like first place good, right, and like nearly looking at a playoff spot good. So I think it's more of like it just pinch me, I can't believe this is happening type of a thing, and it's kind of turned into this deal where it reminds me a lot of a college campus where that's all people want to talk about. You go to a bar, they want to talk about the Golden Knights. You go to the grocery store, they want to talk about the Golden Knights. So it's been a really, really good start. Absolutely,
no doubt. Let's take it back to the beginning. And go from there all the way up until tomorrow's game. And, the history of professional hockey in Vegas is obviously not a lot. The Kings have played some preseason games here. 91, they played a game outside Caesars Palace, the Kings and Rangers. There's been talks of the Coyotes, obviously moving here. Nothing's ever obviously formulated. But when T-Mobile came up, and you were in Vegas then, when T-Mobile began to be built, what was your first thoughts about the speculation of NHL actually becoming more and more of a reality at that point?
I just had a hard time believing that one of the major four professional sports leagues was ever going to actually pull the trigger. I mean, I knew a little bit about the owner. I knew a little bit about the ticket drive when that started coming, but it really just seemed to me to be hard to believe, and then to hear what they were saying, they thought they were going to use T-Mobile Arena 4, which was, they said, yeah, we're going to build it as a hockey arena, but we don't need the hockey tenant for this place to make money. And if any other arena is saying that, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's not probably true. But in Vegas, and MGM's building a majority of it, I mean, they've had these arenas before. It kind of made sense to me. So to me, I had a hard time buying into it until I started seeing the ticket drive, until I learned more about who Bill Foley was and what Gary Bettman was thinking, and then really to learn a lot more about what this city was thinking about having a professional sports team, to see kind of the fervor. I started to believe, you know what, if they really give this place a legitimate chance and they don't just shun us for being a gambling place, they're going to decide to expand here, and that's exactly what wound up happening.
So once we look at the drive in 2015, obviously it brings that sense of, like you said, promise or hope, or, the what if factor with T-Mobile as well. And you, Ken, as a fan, as an up and coming guy, you claim to be a hockey fan. I think you're from Chicago, I think you said.
Correct.
And now hockey is becoming more real in Vegas. Where does the Sinbin, the creation of the Sinbin fall into this timeline?
So it happened in August of 2015, which is well after the ticket drive, well after they got to that point. It was, honestly, and this is, I swear to you, I'm not making this up. I woke up at about 4 o'clock in the morning and I said, if they get a hockey team and I'm not involved in this in some form or fashion, I'm going to feel like a complete idiot. So I better do something. So I started looking around and trying to come up with a way, and I worked at a radio station and it didn't seem like much was going to go there. And I've being a journalist and I went to school for journalism. I moved to Chicago. I moved out here. It's not a job that kind of just comes your way. You kind of have to make your own luck. And I thought, you know what? This is probably the best option for me, is to just go ahead and create my own thing and just really, pound the pavement and do it first and do it best and, be around before they were around, so that if and when they ever are around, that I was there first. And in my wildest dreams, it would not have worked out as well as it did.
Yeah, it seems to all have fallen in place for you. Well, between the creation of Sinbin and the creation of the Vegas Golden Knights, what was that time like? It's a limbo period. What was that time like for you? And you're reporting on a potentially fictional franchise.
I loved it, and I know that most people are going to think I'm absolutely nuts, but I was terrified for games to start and me to actually be covering hockey, because I know how to do it, and I know what sports are like, and I know the monotony of a regular season. Now, luckily, to this point, we have not had the monotony of the regular season because the team's good, and they're not what I thought most of us wanted to be. Throughout all of that process, basically from August of 2015 until June of 2016, when it became 100% official. And then really, you can go all the way until June of 2017, when we finally got all the players. It was just a lot of fun to consistently come up with things to write about, consistently find people mentioning the Vegas Hockey or the Golden Knights or whatever. And then the naming was really kind of a wild ride that we went through there. We did jersey designs. We did a mock expansion draft. We did all sorts of stuff. And it was really challenging to kind of come up with something every single day that was new and creative and in many ways enjoyable to read. And I think we did that for a majority of the days, some better than others. But to me, looking back, it's a time that we'll never have again. Like from here until forever, I will always be covering what's going on the ice, what's going on with personnel, what's going on with all these different things. I will never again cover, will this team actually be in existence? The only possible thing that could ever be close to it would be if there were rumors of them leaving. And honestly, I don't think that's ever happening. So it was unique. It was different. And to me, I had a blast doing it. Do I want to do it again? I don't know, maybe not, but, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can believe that. Like you said, it's gotta be like the slow time, during the summer when it's just baseball. Like, how do I fill this information quota with the team that doesn't have any transactions or even any off-field incidents going on? I'm sure that had to be fun, both literally and figuratively, trying to come up with inventive storylines or even something that you could create that may or may not happen in a team that may or may not be here. So I give you kudos to that, because I've been following since around the time the team was approved. And you're right, some of those articles, it's definitely gives you the readers an interesting read. So I applaud you for that. So we look forward going in the first transactions, quote unquote. Obviously, Reed Duke was the first person signed by George McPhee, but I want to talk about McPhee and Gallant's fit within the organization and how they, specifically their experiences with expansion franchises and with general manager roles, has been a benefit to Vegas's expansion process.
It's kind of an interesting process, because McPhee was hired right away, like I believe it was within 3 months of when they actually got the team awarded. McPhee was awarded, hired before they even had a team name. So he was on board pretty quickly. Then we knew it's going to take a little while for them to get a coach. There was some rumors of it may happen after the expansion draft. It may happen right before the expansion draft. It wound up happening about a month and a half prior to the expansion draft. So there was definitely a difference in who has been here and who has kind of more control and who's put a whole bunch of different things in place. And immediately, I thought that was going to be a bit of an issue because Gerard Gallant is well known as a guy who is very player friendly, very good at developing players, very good at getting the best out of players, but he's never really taken that step to go from, development coach to superstar cup winning playoff coach. So that's the step that George McPhee has always been wanting and has been missing throughout his career. He's created great teams, but they've never won a cup. So I always thought, based on a lot of the things they said, that there was going to be a little bit of strife there, that there was going to be some times where the player or the coach wanted a different player than the GM did, or vice versa, or they're going to make decisions that don't kind of jive together. And it was always kind of in my belief that when the team is finally ready to be really good, which I thought was going to be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road, that Gerard Gallant may not actually be the right guy, and that first fall was going to fall on him rather than on McPhee or rather than on somebody else. Now that I've seen what they've been able to do and what Gerard Gallant's gotten out of all these players, I'm in a completely different place, thinking that, first of all, I think he got the Jack Adams Award Coach of the Year wrapped up. Like, I don't see how anybody else can even come close to outdoing Gerard Gallant. And that is a huge honor for a first year coach in a new franchise in a new city. So moving forward, it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how the two mesh together, how the trade deadline, goes down, and then what winds up happening if they wind up in the playoffs, and then moving forward, how things go the next couple of years.
Yeah, so Gallant obviously has that experience with Columbus. They weren't exactly the expansion franchise's first. He wasn't exactly the expansion franchise's first coach. However, he was there, in the very infant stages of Columbus. My lasting memory of Gallant before coming to Vegas was him getting left off the team bus in Florida, and I think any hockey fan will remember that and how the Panthers kind of did him wrong in that sense. So. You got McPhee, you got Gallant, you got one player to kind of have a face. Now we have the expansion draft. And Gary Bettman pretty much came out and said, look, the process goes as follows. We want Vegas to be as competitive immediately as we can make them. So you take one player, the protection rules and the agreements were a little different than in expansion past. And so you were at the expansion draft. And I was there too, but the buzz was electric. But what was it like watching actual positions and needs and holes be filled?
It was a lot to take in. I'll go back to kind of one of your previous questions. We spent 18 months or so basically coming up with anything anyone said about the Golden Knights, we reported on. Always. No matter who it was, no matter what you said, it didn't make a difference. We always reported on it. Then all of a sudden, in the course of about 2 hours, maybe even less, they wind up with 30 players on the franchise. And I'm like, my head was spinning, and my head still kind of spins from a lot of what was going on that day. It was a wild experience, and it was hard to kind of keep track of what was going on, what impact everything had. It kind of slowed down as we moved forward, but to now look back at it and have a pretty good idea of what they were trying to do and what they were able to do, it's even more unbelievable that this team is having the amount of success that they're having, because honestly, they pass on a lot of really good players to go younger or to go draft picks, and they're still doing really well out of the gate here.
What were your thoughts when you went to the name unveiling and the jersey unveiling? What were your initial thoughts on both the name and the jersey? Obviously, it had mixed reviews. What did you think when that first initial, it came right at you? We're the Golden Knights, and this is what we're wearing.
First of all, the atmosphere at that was unbelievable. It was one of the first moments when I actually realized, like, wait a minute, this is going to be a really, really cool hockey city when all gets going, and just having that whole experience out in front of the arena and people hanging over the parking garage at New York and all that. That was really neat. But then when I saw the name, I knew it was Desert Knights, Silver Knights, or Golden Knights. So I was I knew that's what it was going to be. So when it was golden, it didn't really make a difference to me which one of those three picked. I wasn't, too keen on the name. It doesn't really make a difference to me nonetheless. However, when I saw the logo, specifically the secondary logo, which is the sword star, which is in the shape of the star on the Vegas sign, I love that logo. So I pretty quickly fell in love with the color scheme and the logos and the idea of what was going on there. So I was pretty happy with it.
So you're okay with the red involved in it? I know that's been the big mixed emotion one, is the red.
Yeah, I love the red. I think they needed something more than just your bland black and gold. It really sets them apart. And if you see the white jerseys, that red is absolutely awesome on those white jerseys.
You're right. It's very definitive. The first jersey I bought was a white jersey, and I just remember thinking the red stripes definitely have a bold part of the structure of the jersey. I 100% agree with you. Let's talk about a couple of those players. Marc-Andre Fleury was obviously the biggest name to any casual and diehard hockey fan. Was he, in your opinion, drafted specifically for that reason? And if not, how long do you anticipate, his time in Vegas to be?
I'm going to say no, he was not drafted solely because he was going to kind of become the face of the franchise, and he was a guy that people knew. And the reason I say that is because they got a pick out of it. They were granted a second-round pick to make that deal. So if you look at the talent of the players you're getting, plus the fact that you're getting that pick, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer of a pick. So that's what I think on that. As far as how long he's going to be around, contract ends at the end of next season, so he's got a season and a half remaining. I think it's tough because right now with the two backup goalies playing as well as they are, it's hard for me to believe that he's going to stick around. That being said, he's got a no trade clause, so there's only a few teams you can trade him to. So it's going to be tough to see what they wind up doing with him, but you're in a good position. You put yourself in a position of power if you're George McPhee, where you have a very good goalie, a goalie that's been there, a goalie that's done that, but you also now have two younger goalies in Malcolm Subban and Oscar Dansk who have played very well despite limited opportunity, but maybe you have your future goalie on the roster as well. So it's a good situation there.
So let's fast forward. Obviously, the season started at the beginning of October. The Knights started on the road. First two games against Dallas and Arizona in their buildings, respectively. I know you made the trip to go see those games. What was the atmosphere in Dallas? What was the reception in Dallas from Dallas players, Dallas fans, in the area? I know that some of my friends made the trip as well. What was the excitement and the buzz like for the first actual game in Golden Knights history?
So it came 4 days off of the worst mass shooting in American history, which just so happened to be, right in our backyard and right at the, the home of the brand new team. So there was certainly a somewhat of a somber atmosphere before the game. The two lines that they lined up with, for the national anthem, the Stars guys actually skated over and stood behind the Golden Knights as like a sign of we're behind you, that type of a thing, which was really cool to see. But then once the game started, it was just the normal hockey game. Really, there was almost a nervous energy because you have a Dallas team that they were expecting their team to be really, really good. They were real good 2 years ago. They had some injuries last year, terrible goaltending last year. They picked up Ben Bishop, and they looked like they were going to be a team that could possibly make a run at the Stanley Cup. So they're playing an expansion team, which is supposed to be garbage, and they kind of beat up the Golden Knights for a majority of the game, but they could not get one past Marc-Andre Fleury. And it kind of looked like the blueprint of what the Golden Knights were going to be. Move forward, no, it's not at all what the Golden Knights were, but that's what the thought was in the building. And I think when the two goals went in by James Neal, it kind of deflated that building. And I think it deflated the Stars quite a bit. I think they look back and say, man, we should have won that game, and we should have got the season off to a better start. And there was definitely an energy in that building that was like, we should not be losing this game. There is no reason we are losing this, and now we are. Now here we go with this season, and that's our first taste. So it was a big moment for Vegas. It was not a good moment for Dallas. And the atmosphere was not anything really all that different than any other game of an opening night for a team that thinks they're going to be good and loses.
Yeah, I can tell you, sitting at home watching that game, my jaw hit the floor after that Neal sprawling top shelf goal against Lettinen after Bishop was taken out of the game. Fast forward to Arizona, we have now another test against a team who was supposed to be much improved, obviously, looking at the outlook of the season so far. That hasn't been the case. We go into overtime. It just seemed like the resiliency from the Golden Knights was going to be on display from a group of guys that just have a chip on their shoulder, from each of the teams that basically said, you're not good enough to stay here. We're going to send you off to, kind of recreate something that you probably won't do. And they just kept, game two, found a way to win. And what was it like in that atmosphere?
It was the beginning to me of the feeling of, I don't think it's invincibility, but kind of semi-invincibility, where they basically just started feeling like, wait a minute, we're the newest team, we're supposed to be terrible, but when we play poorly, we still win. When we play well and things don't look like they're going to go well, we still win. When we play great, we win. They have this feel of things are just going to go right for this team, and because they're writing their history, there is no, well, wait until you go here, or wait until you go on the road, or wait till this happens, or whatever. Throughout the history of every single franchise, they have that defining moment of, this is when it goes badly. For this team, they don't have that. They're all coming into the new place, and now they all kind of feel like this could continue, and we don't have bad things happen to us. The goalies get injured, it doesn't matter. That game in Arizona was, to me, kind of the beginning of it. They dominated that hockey game. They were by far the better team, and with a minute and 15 seconds left, they're down by one goal, and it looks like they're probably going to walk out of Arizona a loser. Instead, Nate Schmidt gets the goal, they go to overtime, they find an unbelievable play behind the goal by Perron, Neal scores it, and now you're looking up and you're 2-0 heading home for what's going to be an emotional home game that should make you 3-0, which they wound up doing. So it was just kind of the beginning to me of writing the history and writing the kind of the culture of what this franchise is going to be. And that is just a team that for some reason continues to get it done.
Right. And you just alluded to it with your last statement. They win the first two on the road, obviously both in thrillers. And now we come home to a packed house with, like you said, a new fan base who is grieving based on the events that happened October 1st. And how does a team like that, a group of guys who've only been together for months, if less, and a franchise that's less than a year old, how does a group of guys like that heal this city and this fan base?
I think it started with their couple of community engagement things that they did. They showed up at police headquarters, and I was actually there for that one, and it was one of the more surreal moments throughout the entire time of covering this team, to see police and their families and all these people about 2 days after the worst tragedy we've probably ever seen in the city and may ever see, hopefully. To see it be such a jovial room, and to see people care so much about players that they don't know their names, they don't know what kind of game they played, they've never seen them score a big goal or an overtime goal or win a game, and those types of things. To see the excitement on people's faces, both there and then at the blood bank when they wound up going there, it really, I think, gave a sense to all the players that it's not about you. It's not about you individually. It's about the shirt that you're wearing. It's about the city on the front. And you're now representing that city, and you're about to do it in front of 17,500 people against a team that you should be able to beat. I think they walked out on the ice that day and said, there is no way in hell we're losing this game. And they came out, scored 4 goals in the first 20 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever it was. And that was just the moment where I think they realized that they are this city's team, and they are representative of this city, and this city is something you want to represent. And you're not representing one street in the middle of the valley. You're representing all of it. And there's a real city around, and I think they got a real feel for that on that day, and then moving forward. And then now since, I think they've really kind of become a part of the community, and they've become like all of us. We all move from somewhere else. We all stay here, and the people that stay absolutely love this city, and will go to bat for it anytime we have a chance.
Absolutely, yeah. That game, sitting in attendance, was incredible. I don't think anything really in my life, sporting event wise, hopefully won't have to, but hopefully nothing in my life will match the level of emotion and intensity that we witnessed on October 10th. Now we get into the season. Knights are 3-0, and the goalies start going down one by one. And now you start to think as a fan, oh, okay, well, Fleury's down, the next man up. But, a lot of times, the farther in you go in your goalie depth, the weaker your team has been. And that wasn't the case with the Knights.
No, for whatever reason, they just kept finding guy after guy after guy that would step in there and do either a good job or a serviceable job. Normally, look back to Dallas, that first game. Ben Bishop gets hit in the face, has something wrong with his mask, has to go out. They put in Kari Lettinen, they give up 2 goals immediately, they lose. Mm-hmm. That hasn't happened to the Golden Knights. Malcolm Subban went in there. They found a way to win that game. He has to come out. Oscar Dansk goes in. Their very first shot he lets up is a goal to tie the game against what is now the second best team in hockey, the St. Louis Blues. Golden Knights come back and win that game. Oscar Dansk goes out, and Maxime Lagacé comes in. Lost a couple, but never really lost a game because of Maxime Lagacé. They consistently were in the game. They weren't changing the way they were playing, and it further went to that feeling of invincibility, which is it doesn't matter what happens. We can have injuries. We can have bad things happen in a game. We can have adversity off the ice. It doesn't matter. This team's going to stick together, and they're going to find a way to get things done. And now they're in an unbelievable spot where they now have 4 goalies that they feel perfectly comfortable to turn to at any point. Most teams don't have 2.
Right. Yeah, that's what's made it so fascinating this year. One goes down, next man up, and it almost feels like you don't miss a beat. The same testament for Gallant. I mean, this new team, no guys have played together before, with the exception of Marchessault and Smith, and a couple of guys here and there, but nobody played with each other last year for the most part. So how has that credit been, with Gallant developing and creating lines on the fly, almost to seem, it seems like they're a little more sturdy now, but in the beginning of the year, you almost need the game experience to kind of determine who goes what, who goes where, who plays what line, and Gallant seems like he's done a pretty good job of putting the pieces together.
Yeah, he pushes every single right button you can possibly push, and some of them are on purpose, and some of them just fall into place for him, but every single time he makes the move, it seems to wind up either being the right move or it doesn't, but it doesn't really seem to affect the team. I think the biggest thing and what's kind of being overshadowed is the style of hockey that this team plays is unbelievably simplistic. Defensively, they are only trying to do one thing, and that's shade guys away from the goal. Shade them behind the goal, shade them away from the goal. Keep the puck out of the front of the net, which seems so obvious and so simple, but a lot of teams overcomplicate things, and they don't do that. And then when they get the puck, they have one goal. Move it forward, get it up the ice, get it going north-south, and get it into the other team's zone. And that's what they do. And to me, it's just really taking a lot of the thinking out of the game. It's taking a lot of the clever stuff out of the game. It's just that make the right pass, get it in the right place, and then put the puck in the net when you have the wide open net. And that's what they've been able to do. And that's why a lot of these line combinations, which seem like they should not make any sense at all, find a way to work. And somehow Cody Eakin winds up having good games, and Brendan Leipzig's having a huge impact, and it's guys that you would never think would be having these impacts. Heck, William Karlsson's like the best player in the NHL right now. Yeah. And he's a guy that couldn't score more than 9 goals in a season for the past 3 years. So it really, I think it's just the style of coaching and what he's asked for out of these players. They all look in the mirror and they say, there's no reason I can't do that, and there's no reason I shouldn't be able to trust that the guy next to me or the guy behind me can't do it as well. And that's what's, I think, made them so dangerous, because that energy is there, the consistency is there, and the balance up and down the roster. It's a very hard team game plan for.
Now, you're in the locker room post-game, and obviously we've talked about it, and everyone's familiar with the fact that these guys were hand-plucked from each of the other 30 squads in the NHL. So guys like McNabb's already faced the Kings, Subban, Bruins, Perron with the Blues, etc. Is there, when you speak to them after the game or even before the game, is there that sense of a chip on their shoulder when, okay, here comes Subban. His first start's going to be against Boston. Do you get the sense that they just have an ramped up sense of revenge, excitement, any of those emotions when you talk to them?
Yeah, they all downplay it. Like every single guy to a man downplays it, except for Nate Schmidt, because he'll just say whatever, and he's an absolute nut. So he's a little bit different, but every single guy downplays it. The one I remember the most is Colin Miller, which was also against Boston. And, he's an offensive style defenseman, a guy that, gets himself in trouble because he's not great in his own zone from time to time. And we basically said, like, come on, there's gotta be something in you. And he said, honestly, I don't want to make too big of a deal of it because then I'm just going to wind up making mistakes. I'm going to wind up doing the wrong thing. But you could tell in his voice that he wanted to pinch forward a little bit more. He wanted those hits a little bit more. And I think you've seen it. You named a bunch of those guys. The guy that probably played the best against his old team was William Carrier against Buffalo. He was all over the place in that game. And you could absolutely tell he's like, listen, you guys made a mistake here, and now I'm going to make you pay for it. And we've seen it from guys in, draft picks or guys that have been traded or free agents or whatever. This is a full collection of those guys. And I think as much as sometimes that one guy's playing well against his old team, the other guys around him, his line mates, his defensive pairing, goalies, whatever, they want to step up. Subban against Boston, they knew how much it would be great if they could get a shutout for Malcolm Subban against a team that literally waived him a week and a half ago. So everybody kicks their game up a little bit, and I think that's a huge part of where the intensity is coming from and why they're playing so well. Is because they do have kind of a collective chip on the shoulder. I don't think it's necessarily an individual per game. It's just everybody sticking up for everybody, and they want to play a little bit better.
Yeah, that trickle-in goal that negated the Subban shutout was at the game. That was pretty heartbreaking. So I can feel.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
I can feel for Malcolm with that one with 30 seconds left. But talking with Ken Boehlke.
He's 4-0 though now, so we can't be too upset for him.
No, I can't believe he's too upset about the one goal. Being an undefeated goalie in Vegas history. Talking with Ken Boehlke, creator, founder of the Sinbin. You can catch him at Sinbin.vegas. You can catch him around the T-Mobile Arena. One more before I let you go. The Sinbin's experience with just this whole process, if you had to sum it up, from birth till now, with the fans and with the players and with the owner and with just even tourists that come to the Strip wanting to catch a game. Just if you had to, put a word or put a phrase to it, what would you say?
The word's awesome. It's been amazing. I've loved every single second of doing it. I love interacting with fans. I love interacting with players. I love interacting with coach, and even McPhee from time to time we get to interact with, and he can even be enjoyable sometimes, although he's a little crass to me from time to time, but that's all right. But all in all, we set out the goal before this ever started that what we wanted to do was we wanted to kind of be a mirror in the locker room and then also in the fan base. We wanted to kind of show everyone else what's going on and be a part of both. I wanted to be in the locker room to get the information from the players, from coach, from, the actual nuts and bolts of what's going on with the team. But then I also wanted to kind of have a pretty good pulse on the fan base. And I think throughout this time, we'll do stories on free donuts, and then we'll do stories on why the back check isn't working in the third period. So it's been an awesome experience, and I honestly still cannot believe that I'm talking about a team that's in first place 22 games into the season. And right now, like on this phone call right now, I believe they will make the playoffs. So I believe I will be covering playoff hockey this season at T-Mobile Arena. That is beyond anyone's wildest belief. And then to take it a step further, they'll probably win that series.
Well, you heard it here first. I believe I'll have to get the research staff. The first official Vegas Golden Knights guarantee for playoff hockey here in Las Vegas. That would just be out of this world bonkers if that happens. And obviously there's a lot of season left, but they're trending in the right direction. So Ken, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you just came from practice. It was a closed door practice to the media. Hopefully, my theory on that is that it's a good sign for Fleury moving forward, but we'll see. So Ken, I appreciate you coming on board, and taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us about the beginnings and the hot start in Vegas Golden Knights history.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
First goal in Golden Knights history here in the exhibition season goes to Tyler Wall.